In this video, we are going to talk about fiber evidence. Fibers are considered class evidence. It's hard to tie a little string to a specific article of clothing. They often fall off and are then picked up by others during just normal activities. It's that Lockhart's exchange principle and the idea of primary and secondary transfer. We will talk about this on Wednesday. During an investigation, you do have to be very careful with fibers. You want to make sure you collect everything within the first 24 hours. If you don't, then people are walking through and they are transferring fibers from one place to another. We can learn a lot from fibers. We can figure out what type of fiber it is, what color it was, maybe if there was violence, such as a stabbing or somebody shot through a t-shirt or something, you could tell that, and you might be able to tell specific point of origin. If you get a lot of fibers, so like a shirt is torn and you find the torn piece of shirt, then you can do some tests that will actually destroy the sample, but you'll still have some left over. And we're going to do some of these on Wednesday. We're going to use flames, and then we will dissolve some things in liquids. However, if all you have is one thread, you have to be really careful. You cannot destroy the entire piece of evidence. Otherwise, when defense attorneys want to test it, they won't have anything to test. So we do have to be very careful in the way we do it. All right, there are various categories of fibers. The first one are natural fibers. Animal fibers are ones that are made out of the protein hair from animals. And here are just some examples. Make sure you know a couple of them. You don't need to know them all. But we all know wool, cashmere, angora. There's lots of different animals that we get our fibers from. Another animal is a caterpillar, where we get silk. Sometimes we don't always think of them as being animals, but they are. Plant fibers is another natural fiber. It's made from the cellulose in the plant. They are very handy because they can absorb water really well. Cotton absorbs water very well. They're resistant to damage from chemicals that you might be around, and they break down over time, so you find them a lot in crime scenes. Think about your favorite t-shirt, favorite pair of jeans, and how after a while they start to get holes in them. It's because they break down. The last type of natural fibers are mineral fibers. Fiberglass is one that you are all aware of. It is a fiber of glass. Asbestos is a mineral that is really good at preventing fires from spreading within buildings, but it can be a health hazard, and we'll mention that in class. And here's a picture. There's fiberglass and some asbestos. All right, up until the 20th century, everything was made out of plant and animal fibers. We didn't have the technology to make synthetics. So up until the 1900s, everything was made out of that. But then once technology started catching up with people's ideas and they started producing man-made materials like nylon and rayon, then now about half of what we use today are artificially produced and half of them are natural. So here's some basics on synthetic fibers. Synthetic are ones that are made by man. They are, if you've ever played with Play-Doh and the little fun factory thing that you put the Play-Doh in and then you push down the lever and it makes all different shapes, it's very similar to that. You have really hot fiber material and they shoot it through a nozzle that will give it a specific shape. It depends on what the fiber is going to be used for as to what shape it is. And at the top of the screen are some magnifications of some cross sections of some real fibers. All right, we're going to go through some different fibers. Just make sure you know some examples of synthetic fibers. There are some that are called regenerated. They are things that have natural fibers in them, but they add chemicals to them to make them stronger. Rayon is the most common type. Most of you are aware of what rayon's like. And here are a couple others that are found in carpeting. And also you'll find the athletic performance clothing will be made out of regenerated fibers lots of times. Another type of synthetic are just polymers in general. They don't have any real structure to them because they've come out of those nozzles. And here's some examples. So polyester, nylon, acrylic. You've probably heard of all of those. Olefins, that's another one that some of you who are in sports might be aware of that sort of material. So here's a comparison. On the left you have a picture of cotton, and on the right you have a picture of rayon. The cotton goes every which way. The rayon has more uniform shape to it. Here are some zoomed in pictures of the cuticles on some of the animal hair that gets used for animal fibers. And also then you have linen, cotton, and polyester zoomed in so you can see how everything compares to one another. These will all be turned into threads and then woven into clothing. So when you do that, when you weave it into clothing, everything has to be made into thread or yarn. And then you weave it, bond it, crochet it, felt it, all these different things that can be done in order to make the different types of fabric. So we're going to look at some examples of types of fabric. But before we do that, we need to know the basic terminology. Yarn is any continuous strand of fibers, whether it's twisted or not. So technically, string and all that is a type of yarn. We tend to think of the fluffy stuff as yarn, but anything that you wind up that you're going to end up weaving is called yarn. When you look at a zoomed in picture of a piece of fabric, the yarn that is going lengthwise is called the warp. The one that's going crosswise is called the weft. And when we have a blend, it means that one way you have one material, another way you have another material, or maybe the yarn is a woven mix of different materials. It all depends on the purpose of the fabric. You do not need to memorize all these, but here are some examples of different weave patterns. Those of you that might be familiar with sewing or knitting might be familiar a little bit with some of this. We'll look at these under the microscope. There are a bunch of different weaves. You do not need to memorize all these. I just want to quickly point them out. So here's a plain weave. This one's called twill. This one is in denim. It's very sturdy. Satin, it flows really easily, really loose. Knit, you guys know that. It can hold together pretty tight, but it also can be stretchy depending on how you knit it. There are many different ways for testing fibers. Some of these we'll do in class, and they're the ones you are responsible for. The first one is looking underneath a microscope and being able to identify whether it is natural or synthetic based on just observing. You can burn it. We'll learn how to burn it and tell a little bit about what type of fiber it is. Thermal decomposition has to do with heating the fiber. We will also do that. Chemical test, we will test different acids and some other materials on the fabric and see if they dissolve. You can test the density of the fabric. We won't be doing that in class. It's a little difficult to do. Refractive index is a little difficult to do as well, but that's how well light bends through the fibers. And whether it will fluoresce or not. We will try that in class. It does not always work in here, but there's a picture to the side to let you see what it does. Some things, if you've ever been in a room with a black light with a really bright white shirt on and how it really glows blue, that's fluorescing. There are a bunch of other ways to do it. This really is just for those of you who are really interested in it. There are all kinds of machines that you can put fibers in, and the machines can do an analysis and figure out exactly what you are dealing with. I will not test you on any of these. Only what we do in class. Dyes. There are many different dyes out there that are put into fabric. There are over 7,000 different ones, and there are databases out there to keep track of it all. We can use chromatography to separate the dyes from one another and see what everything's made up of. Have you ever noticed sometimes when you put on a black pair of pants and a black t-shirt, how they don't match? The black doesn't necessarily match each other. Or navy blues, reds. We have that problem here at Hillgrove with reds and crimson. They don't always match. It's because different materials accept dye in a different way. And again, I'll show you that in class. Basics on how to collect. You're going to bag them individually, just like we've already learned. If you have a dead body or a suspect, you may put tape all over the skin and pick up any fibers that they may have on their skin or on their clothing. And we will talk about Wayne Williams. You've already researched him a little bit. All right, hopefully everybody watches this for Wednesday, and we are going to look at fibers and burn them and do some chemicals Wednesday and Thursday. Then you guys will be given some samples to try and determine what they are, and you will actually get a grade on whether you are right or not. On Friday, we will take a quick quest over this. Thanks for listening.